Welcome to the second program in the new Art and Aging series sponsored by Elder Care Ministries of the American Baptist Churches of Rhode Island. Through this series, we are featuring outstanding artists who are in the third of life. And today we are so glad to welcome Linda Wiles as our featured artist. Linda is a gifted pianist, as well as a music teacher and choir director. And many of you have been privileged to hear Linda perform during her years in Rhode Island. And now we continue to be able to hear her play virtually through the magic of technology, even though she's relocated to Iowa. Today, in addition to getting to hear Linda perform, we're going to talk with her about what she sees as the lifetime benefits of music. So Linda, welcome, welcome, welcome. Recently, you told me that your earliest memories involve music. So I wonder if you could share some of those memories and then talk about how music has continued to shape your life, and maybe including some specific times when music played an especially important role.
You are right. Some of my earliest memories that I have of music is my mother made me a little pink tutu. Now, those of you who know me know I am not a ballerina, but as a young girl, I guess you always had those dreams. And I was probably 3. And she got me a record of Chopin waltzes. And the kids all had this little record player. And I really thought I had died and gone to heaven. I just thought it was absolutely glorious to dance around my house to Chopin waltzes in my little pink tutu. At 5, my state did not have free kindergarten. So when I turned the age to go to kindergarten, my parents said I had to make a choice, that I could either have piano lessons or I could go to kindergarten. And I said, well, piano lessons. I would love to learn to play the piano, because I had sat at the keyboard and tried to imitate what I heard my mom play. My mom was a church pianist for years, not really classically trained, but a good church pianist. And then I got excited the next year when I went to first grade, because I came home and I said, oh my goodness, they have ABCs in school, just like we have on the piano. Because back then, mom we had, lots of little kids. She didn't read to us. So I really didn't know anything about the alphabet, but I knew how to play the piano. So I don't remember, I played piano before I even read a book. So that was the early history. I was fortunate to have an excellent teacher in a tiny Oklahoma town of 4,000 or 5,000 people, who was just exceptional. And I had her throughout, except for the very first year of my lessons. She was my teacher. I was in all the high school choirs and high school band, and my band was a good band. And we marched in the Cotton Bowl parade and the Sugar Bowl parade. And so music has just always been part of that. As you might expect, as a pastor's wife from the South, it was rather expected that he should marry a person who was a musician, so that the church could have a free pianist. That was just kind of the role that you were expected to play. We have 3 children. All of them are also very musical. And yes, they had to suffer with me as their piano teacher. I let them have different voice teacher, but they did have to suffer through piano with me. Music was in our family from the time you woke up until you went to sleep. Somebody was scheduled to practice on the piano at this time, and somebody was scheduled for this time. We rode in the car. We're always singing, and sometimes we would try to sing like at a half step apart from each other, the same song, and whoever could stay on pitch was the winner. And by the time we get to the end of the song, and you couldn't just sing louder than anybody else, or we would sing hymns with the words and the music in the wrong place, like Amazing Grace, Amazing Grace. We'd say, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. We would try to come up with things that would just stretch your brain in as many different ways, and also keep the kids from hurting each other in the back seat. One of the problems with being a pastor's wife and a musician is the many moves that you may make. And each time you move, you're moving for him. And so you have now lost your career and a large part of what you consider to be your identity. And so starting over and starting over. And about, I don't know, maybe 15 years in, I decided that I wanted to get certification in mathematics. I've always loved math as well. And so began teaching mathematics in 98, which maybe is more like 20 years in. But nevertheless, but I didn't give up the music. I'm still playing in church and I'm still doing stuff around, whenever I can. So in Rhode Island, I ended up teaching at a Catholic school, teaching music at a Catholic school for a while, music director at St. Mark's Episcopal in Warwick and out at Greenville. Not as long at Greenville just because we just hadn't made that contact. Once it meant teaching voice in a college. And I was very upset because to me, that was God wanting my worst gift. I didn't understand that. So that's kind of my history.
Great. Will you talk a little bit, because you're going to perform in a few minutes. Linda's picked a really interesting program, so we're going to get to that really soon. But you made one of the most interesting comments, I thought, and I asked you about, were there different venues you prefer to play in, or how were they different? And your comment was, when I play, it's always a conversation with God. Could you talk a little bit about that?
It is where I probably do my hardest work between me and God. We work out grievances we have with each other, maybe. We sometimes get to celebrate together. At one point when life got very difficult for us in a church setting, I found that I could not play hymns for a year. I just could not go there. And Chopin became my mentor that year. And I worked a Chopin concert, and we raised money for choir robes in 2 different churches. And kind of eventually, I made peace and entered, church music again. But yes, it is that conversation. And when I play, I want to bring you into that conversation. That's my goal.
Well, that's a great segue. We're going to let you do that. So you want to talk about what the program looks like, and then from now on, it's you and the piano.
That is my favorite place to be. It's me and my piano, pretty much. So today, actually, this happened initially because I'm currently the online musician for the First Presbyterian Church here in Waterloo, where my daughter-in-law is the pastor. Their keyboard person graduated from college in the middle of the pandemic, and they have had nobody. So we have a lady who's doing some stuff, organ in person, but because of Tom and everything, I didn't want to do that. So for Lent, I thought every Wednesday, and some of you have probably followed some of this Wednesday music, every Wednesday we produce what they call midweek music. And for Lent, particularly because of the pandemic, I thought it would be interesting to visit different arrangements of It Is Well With My Soul. It's a hymn that I love and I also have difficulty with. I missed seeing my dad by 8 hours. I had a plane ticket to go see him, and he died that morning before I could even get on the plane. There are times it is not well with your soul. And so these 3 arrangements are going to show us different aspects of that. For those of you who might not know the story, briefly, Horatio Spofford was a lawyer and owned a lot of real estate in the Chicago area. He owned a lot of real estate during the Great Chicago Fire in 1871 and almost became destitute. Additionally, their 4-year-old son had scarlet fever and died. So in an effort to kind of help his wife get over some of the severe depression that had occurred, he sent her and the 4 daughters that they had across to Europe for a vacation, and he was to join them in a few weeks. The ship, which ironically is named Haven House, wrecked and went down. And it wasn't the Titanic, it was a Via du Havre, pardon my French. I don't say that well, which is also the tune name for this. So the ship went down and only his wife survived. And so they lost their 4 daughters. And when he decided to go join his wife, the captain of the ship called him over and said, "This is the spot where the ship wrecked." And he stood there watching the sea waves just go like crazy and penned the words to "It Is Well With My Soul." Most of the arrangements that you'll see, because they're usually confined to the amount of time we have for an offertory at church, so you're going to get 2 verses is all you're going to get out of most hymn arrangements. You're not going to get all 5 like you might sing if you were actually in church. And the first verse, when peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well, it is well. And the last verse, and Lord, haste the day when my faith shall be sight, the clouds be rolled back like a scroll, the trump shall resound and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. So with that in mind, the first arrangement I'm going to play, you're going to hear the motif for the water, because there's a water motif here. This is kind of a water motif that goes on. But in the presentation of the first time that they present "It Is Well With My Soul," there is a question in the notes that are written here. And even though it has a slight uptick on the second verse, the trump shall resound, it doesn't end necessarily in that positive note. It still leaves you with this question that it is well right now, but probably in an hour and a half, it's going to roll right back over me one more time, and I'm going to deal with this grief again. I have told Catherine that I see my primary role as an interpreter. I look at these little black dots on a page, and my job is to make them come alive and send you into the different spots that relate to the text. And I can do that with motion, and I can do that by stopping. And so the first one is "It Is Well With My Soul," and it's arranged by a lady named Lawrence. You also heard a bit of a clock thing going there. As time goes on in your grief changes and goes kind of back and forth. The next one is dark. Sometimes I actually even cry while I'm playing it. It is heavy. That almost comes around as if you're continually reminding yourself, it is well, it is well, I'm okay, it is well. And then there are two chords that follow this motif that are heavy. They are dissonant, meaning the notes will clash. And it just, the heaviness of it, honestly, is kind of what makes me cry. There's a middle section that has a swirly motif, kind of, again, that water. And I kind of see this like you start your day and the heaviness is with you in your day. And you go about your business and here's all this kind of swirling around you. And in the middle of this swirl, you're going to hear the little motif of it is well, it is well. And then you get home and you open the door and you're right back where you started, with time being marked out by your grief and the chords that just see, this is too heavy. I got to get one foot, just one foot in front of the other. This one is arranged by Miedema. Well, that's dark. I'm sorry. That's just, it'll take me a second to kind of, because I go in places that are, you know, the places you visit in grief. And in order to pull that out, I live in those places. Kind of an aside, I had the privilege of playing the Rachmaninoff C minor concerto with a symphony one time. Okay, so I didn't get to do a whole lot of super fancy playing like that. And so it was so exciting. And I'm sitting on the stage surrounded by sound, which is like a feeling in your body like no other. And I'm in the second movement, which is, again, it's a very grief-laden movement. And all of a sudden, I just start crying because it is so beautiful. And I'm sitting there and the keys are getting wet. And then I'm thinking, you must stop this. You must get out of this. And yet you're still trying to keep playing. So sometimes then it's hard to get back in the next place that you're going. The next one is the one I think most people want to say they think about it, where it becomes much more triumphal. See, because God is with me, I've got this. And a lot of people want to live there, and they don't want to visit, to me, what are the essential spots of grief that go hand in hand with triumph. So the last one that I'll play in our series, I haven't played it yet online, is a Dino arrangement of It Is Well. In this one, I mean, you're going to hear the ocean just, it's just going to, it's not just this nice little gentle water that we had on the first one, for sure. This one is just going to roar, rip and roar. And Lord, haste the day when faith shall be sight. You're going to know we're at that verse when we get to that one.
Thanks. How amazing. Before we open it up for other people to ask questions, Linda has put together some benefits of music that part of what we always try to do is have our featured artists share some tips or some ideas or some benefits for how other folks can engage in whatever the art form. So with music. So Linda, what are some benefits you would recommend?
Well, for me, maybe one of the greatest benefits for me is as an introverted personality, it's a great social entrance for me. I can relate to people. I can go to a church function and sit on a bench and just people think it's normal, or they can say something about if I've played in church that Sunday, then they can talk about that. And I don't have to make chit chat because I'm really bad at chit chat. It's exhausting to me. So to me, that's a great thing for it. I think choirs, for the most part, are a safe social space. Every now and then you get in one that has prima donnas in it, but for the most part, they're a safe space to enjoy church. Churches love people willing to sing. I remember early on when I was visiting churches by myself in Rhode Island, because I knew Tom would never end up going to church with me. People would turn around and say, "Oh, would you like to join the choir?" And I just sang on pitch and probably sang. And they were like, "Oh, somebody's singing. We should do something about this." So to me, that's a great thing. We know that the kind of breathing you do when you sing is a mood booster. It's hard to go away from a choir rehearsal and feel sad. It just makes you feel better. We know it helps keep your lungs healthy, which is a huge deal for those of us, as we look at pneumonia and issues. This age kind of gives me a freedom to explore other instruments and not be heartily judged by people. If my bagpipe thing isn't so good, or my accordion play that I've learned to do in my old age, or my flute playing isn't so good, people tend to excuse it a little nicer. And I just have fun just exploring then the possibilities of different instruments. I think music improves your listening. I truly believe there's nobody who can't sing. I believe people can sing. I believe people haven't learned to listen. And that's why they're not singing. God gave you the voice to sing. If you have inflections, you can sing. It may not be the sound you like, because I confess, standing in the yucky parsonage at North Platte, Nebraska, they've redone it since then. I'm going to say that in case any of them listen to this. And trying to sing and prepare for my students' lessons that I taught at the college, and just weeping. Oh God, why did you give me this voice? This is horrible. Can't believe I have to do this kind of thing. But then I move here, and my 6-year-old granddaughter hears me putting the baby to bed at night. And she's outside the room because she knows I want to try to get him quiet. And when I come out, she said, "Oh, Gaina, you just have the most beautiful voice." And I was like, "Oh, thank you very much. Thank you." Other people don't judge us near as much as we judge ourselves. So sing a hymn in your house, sing in the shower. You sound better in there. And, choose those kind of places. We know it makes your brain more resilient. We know that. This is just scientifically proven. Just look that up. In my case, the last 2 months, I have tried to go back and play a piece by memory in front of a camera, not just for myself, but literally in front of a camera. Okay, this is something I haven't done in a long time. And that's a whole different kind of brain functioning that goes on. And as you can see here, there's a lot of multitasking that's going on. I have to be present where I am and yet think to my future constantly. And so your eyes are having to function better. Although I now have cataracts, and sometimes that makes it scary when I play, because music just disappears from the page. It goes gray on me, and that's kind of scary. But finding someone to help you with that. Another thing that I like to do, and it's not that I haven't studied music history, but I love, there's a group called Great Courses. And I happen to know that you can get them through Ocean State's libraries, because I'm still a member of the Ocean State library system. And so like when I was making, some of you may have seen Tom's office. So I'm working on all these shelves in Tom's office, and I'm listening to a great course about Beethoven sonatas, and absolutely had a ball. So I'm doing something productive and kind of hearing somebody else, and I'm yelling amen out there. And April's like, what are you doing, Mom? And I'm like, I really agree with this guy. He's doing a great job. So any of the great courses that help you learn to listen, I think that's important. Movement, regardless of whether you're doing it with your hands. I'm going to tell you, the oldest person I ever had start piano was 88. So I'm kind of like, well, that's on the cusp of 90. So your brain's still going to benefit regardless of when you start it. Some instruments you may need an instructor, and others you may be bold like me and just say, that bagpipe looks so fun, I think I'll buy a chanter and see what happens, and I scare my grandkids that way. But I think it teaches you a variety of being here and being forward. I think it's hard to be present. For me, it's hard to be right where I am. I'm always thinking. I'm always thinking about something. And so for me to stay in place for as long as a piece takes is really quite significant, because you can't let your mind wander very far. And the resilience of making a mistake and still going. We're going to make a mistake. That's just a given. You're going to have something you didn't like, but you can't sit there and argue with yourself. You got to move forward. And for me, it makes diaper changes so much easier. If you're singing a song and you're playing along and the baby doesn't want to go down on the thing, but then you sing the song and it's wonderful.
Great. Thanks, Linda. Those are all wonderful. Well, I'm sure folks have questions they'd like to ask. So if you do, just unmute yourself and ask away. See if I see any hands. You don't have to. Well, while you all think. Doug.
I'll start with a question. I was really curious, Linda. This is Doug Harris. I was really curious that when you are asked to play something, and if your emotions are in a very different place than what the music is calling for, how do you deal with that?
Probably like, gee, I don't want to cheapen this, but kind of like an actor would call on something in your life that helps you relate to what it is that you're doing. Mm-hmm. There are times when I have played for the funerals of some of my own piano students while they were still young students. And those are often very difficult. I have played for my family members' funerals. And so, but it's my job at that point. Mm-hmm. This is become, you go to that spot of a job, and I have to play this where this particular piece is. And and that's why I was saying a minute ago, it might take me a second to recover from the one that's just so heavy to now I want to go out and, it's like have a party with Jesus, as opposed to the other one where it's like, Jesus, pick me up and carry me.
Right.
So.
Yeah, very good.
Great, thanks. Other folks, who has a question?
I have not a question, but a comment, Linda. That was so beautiful. Thank you so much. And we appreciate you from all the way from Iowa. I'm from Bethany and Pawtucket, so remember us to Tom. I'm so glad that he's doing so well. He was a big help to us while we were in a recent pastoral search. And he was a big guide to us. And just before you all moved away, so, and we're glad to hear that he's doing well. I've been a piano player since I was a child too. I think Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, many of us stop with that. And my mother was our church organist, and assistant organist and organist for probably a total of 30 or 40 years. I don't remember quite. And I started out playing for the junior choir. And when I was officially playing anywhere, I took lessons. I was one of those odd people who love to do scales, but I'm certainly not in your league as far as concert quality by any means. At Bethany, we had a very strong music program, and we had a wonderful organist and pianist, and they often played duets, and both of them were concert quality, and was a great pleasure for us to have them. And now, unfortunately, they're both gone, and the church is now left with me. So I float back and forth between the organ and the piano, but I do all right. And but I always say I'm loving playing the hymns. That's where I'm the happiest.
Thank
But
you.
Sarah, we've enjoyed you so much today.
And I don't think you have to be perfect at it to be of service to a church. If you're playing at a church, you're doing service. You
That's
really
true.
are. And one of the things I've always tried to tell my students, and honestly, and tell myself, is God has heard my practice. God knows how hard I'm trying. And my goal is not to make necessarily everybody in the congregation as happy as I would like to do service for God. And so that continues to be my focus. And I think it takes it off of yourself a little bit and alleviates the pressure. And I know I appreciate when someone's willing to get up, because it kind of feels a lot like, well, I don't know, this is probably not appropriate, but it does sort of feel like taking off your clothes in front of people. I'm going to bare my soul to you and maybe make a fool of myself at the same time. But, you know, I'm excited because just since my mother moved here in November, middle of a pandemic, but they have a Monday church service there. And her last facility, even though being a church pianist her whole life, she was not comfortable playing, but she's now playing hymns for them again. And she's 92. And so I just think that's wonderful.
Other questions that folks have? Kathy, go ahead.
Linda, this has been a treat. I love the way you did this with all the different arrangements and talking about the different backgrounds. And I was wondering if you have some current favorite arrangers that you kind of favorites to go to.
I love Joseph Martin music. It's very friendly to my small hands. One of the things that, you know, I have to make a choice. Both Miedema and Dino have much larger hands than I have. And so they can, when they write for notes that go from my little finger all the way to over here. And then I have to make a choice. Am I going to try to hop across them all? Or I'm going to give some of them up. Am I going to try to catch one with this hand? So the arrangers that are my favorite are usually ones who write and it fits my hand, and I don't have to do I don't mind practicing scales and stuff like that. But when I look at it and I know from the beginning, oh, okay, this is going to take a lot of modification from my little bitty hand. So probably right now, he would be my favorite. In choir stuff, I kind of like the joy that you get in Pepper Choplin music. So if your choir doesn't do any Pepper Choplin, you might look at that, because I just think most of his stuff is it's just fun. And I think sometimes we get very serious about Jesus. And so it's kind of nice to just, you know, you could just put Jesus in the car with you and sing songs and not have to be serious. I say this from the pastor's family.
Other
So
folks.
question about that. So do you have favorite artists that you'd like to listen to right now?
I am totally not picky. I am totally not picky at all. Although my family would say probably the opposite. I will buy, sometimes download two different people playing something, and then I'll pick one of them to pieces and say, oh, do you hear how he did this here and this, you know? And so then I won't ever listen to that one again. So probably it depends on the composer I'm listening to, who I like the best. So when I say I'm not picky, I am picky, but it depends. Because I think there's some people who do Chopin better than others, and there's some people who do Beethoven really well, and there's some people who do Bach really well, and so my son gave me Albanus for Christmas and horn concerti for my birthday, and I just say thank you and learn them.
Any other questions?
I should say my favorite popular artist, which this is just random, is Carole King. I love Carole King.
It's great.
That is probably one of the only popular artists I can even name, because I just don't, I get bored with the structure of the music. Tom and I, when we get in the car, he puts it on the golden oldie station, you know, the 60s, 70s, 80s music, and I pop it back to classical PBS music.
Linda, do you want to talk about a next project that actually I think you get to start right after this program?
I do. I'm kind of excited. It's kind of different when you move into a place like this and you have a pandemic that hits before you can actually do anything so anybody knows who you even are. And here I'm kind of known as Dr. Wiles's mother, because my son is the choral director at the University of Northern Iowa and has a chorale and the varsity men's glee club. So I'm kind of known as his mom. I was contacted a week ago. There is going to be a world premiere of a new musical called Suffragist. See if I can say that carefully, Suffragist. Obviously a women's issue kind of thing. The music has been written by a female composer that I had just a kind of a one-year overlap with at college, where I went to college at Oklahoma Baptist University. And it was supposed to have premiered last summer, but because of the pandemic, it didn't. And they lost their pianist, and I got a call from her. So I've agreed to do that. And so I'll be making, and it's kind of different. You ask what I listen to. Well, now I have nothing to listen to. I'll be the first one to make the recording, so I don't know what it even sounds like. But the score for that musical is supposed to be dropped off, and my understanding is that it's going to be 3 really intense weeks in July, 12-hour-a-day rehearsals. And we have someone coming from Broadway who's directing the play, and like really guild actors and musicians. And so I feel kind of, and I'm making a little bit of money as well, you know, and on Social Security, that's kind of important. We have learned.
Well, that's so exciting. So thanks for sharing that. Thanks for being with us. This has been just really terrific. And we'll stay on for a little bit afterwards, and people can say their individual thank yous. But I want to thank each one of you for coming as well, and invite you to the next program in our Art and Aging series. And it'll be on April 13th. And our featured artist will be Stephen Holloway, a retired pastor who is also a gifted poet. In addition to reading some of his poetry, Steve will talk about the role that poetry has played in his spiritual life and suggest poets others may enjoy. So we'll hope you will join us on April 13th. We also hope that you'll let folks know that they can watch a recording of this program, or you can watch it again. If you loved 1 or 2 or 3 of those arrangements and you just want to hear them again, if you'll go to the Elder Care Ministries website, by tomorrow, we should have a recording posted. So again, thank you, each one of you, for coming. And Linda, thank you so much. This has been such a gift.
Fun to be back in Rhode Island just a little bit. We miss Rhode Island.